The smartphone vibrated at the exact moment Eleanor Davis stood up with her glass of champagne, and all the dinner guests obediently turned toward her. Victoria felt the vibration through the fabric of her dress pocket, quiet but persistent, like a hand gripping her wrist. She glanced down at the illuminated screen. Haley. Welcome to the Friend or Foe channel. Enjoy the story. Her daughter never called just to chat. At 16, she preferred texting, sending short messages or voice notes, but never actual phone calls, which she considered a gross invasion of personal space. It was her little point of principle, the quiet rebellion of her generation. If Haley was calling, something had happened. Victoria hit decline, silently promising to call her back in 10 minutes when the toast was over. Eleanor spoke at length, pausing for effect, like a woman accustomed to being listened to. She wore a burgundy dress adorned with a vintage cameo brooch, an expensive antique her son had given her for her previous milestone birthday. Jason sat to his mother's right, smiling at her words and nodding occasionally. In moments like this, he looked like a poster boy from a mid-century American magazine. Neat, obedient, bright-eyed. The phone vibrated again. Haley. This time, Victoria slipped away from the table quietly, placing a hand over her heart in an apologetic gesture. Nobody really noticed. All eyes were on the birthday woman. Mom. Her daughter's voice was strange. Not terrified, but worse, stifled, as if she were speaking with a hand clamped tightly over her mouth. Mom, are you still there? At the party? Yes, sweetie, what is it? Get out of there right now. Make up any excuse you want, but leave. I will explain everything later, I promise. Just leave this second. Victoria stepped into the narrow hallway between the country club's dining room and the foyer. It smelled of catered food and that distinct scent of a rented venue that is impossible to describe, but impossible to mistake for anything else. Haley, she said quietly and clearly. Are you okay? Are you in any danger? I'm fine. I'm not in danger, but you can't be there. Mom, please. I'll explain as soon as you're outside. There was a pause. 3 seconds, maybe 5. In those seconds, Victoria managed to run through several scenarios. Haley got something mixed up. Haley misunderstood something. Haley had a fight with someone and needed her mother right now. All these options were possible, but there was something in her daughter's voice that did not fit any of them. Not anxiety. It was knowledge. She knew something specific. Okay, Victoria said. I'm leaving. She returned to the dining room just as Eleanor was taking her seat to a round of applause. Jason caught his wife's eye, and Victoria did not have time to process exactly what she read in his gaze because he immediately looked away. The movement was too fast, too deliberate. Eleanor, Victoria said, approaching her mother-in-law and leaning in. I'm so sorry, but I have to go. Haley called, and she isn't feeling well. She probably has a fever. She complained about a sore throat yesterday. Eleanor looked up at her. She had pale gray eyes, beautiful but cold, like pebbles on a winter beach in Maine. Is that so? Her mother-in-law said. Her voice was even, welcoming even, but something in it tightened like a coiled spring. What a pity. We just started. I apologize again. Happy birthday. You look wonderful. Jason stood up automatically, out of habit. I'll drive you, he said. No need. I'll call an Uber. You stay with your mom. Something flickered across his face. Relief? Disappointment? Victoria could not quite tell. She was already walking to the coat rack, grabbing her trench coat, fishing for her keys in her purse. A few guests followed her with sympathetic looks. Kids get sick, it happens. No one was judging. Only one of Eleanor's friends, a woman in a coral blazer, looked at her somewhat differently. Victoria did not know her name. Her face was entirely unfamiliar. The heavy front doors closed behind her, and the chilly Seattle evening air greeted her. Victoria requested a ride on her app and immediately called her daughter back. I'm outside. Talk to me. Haley started speaking quickly, without any preamble, and Victoria listened while standing on the sidewalk. And the longer she listened, the more clearly she understood that the chill she was feeling was not from the wind. It all started 3 days ago. Haley had come home from high school earlier than usual. Her AP history test was rescheduled, and her last period was canceled. She walked into the apartment quietly because she had her AirPods in, listening to music, and simply did not think to announce her arrival. Her father was sitting in the kitchen, talking on the phone. The door was mostly closed, but not completely. Haley was not eavesdropping. She was just taking off her jacket in the entryway when she heard her father's voice. Snippets, phrases, disconnected like fragments of someone else's dream. The attorney confirmed everything's clean. She doesn't suspect a thing. I checked. Mom arranged for him to be there by 9. Yes, tonight's the last chance. If she signs tonight, it's done. Haley froze in the entryway. Then, carefully, on tiptoe, she stepped back out into the apartment hallway and quietly pulled the door shut. She stood out there for 5 minutes, then unlocked the door and walked in noisily. Hey, Mom, I'm home. Even though her mother was not there. Her father walked out of the kitchen, completely calm, putting his phone in his pocket, and asked how her test went. She replied that it was postponed and said nothing else. For 3 days she stayed quiet, thinking, trying to find an explanation that was not terrifying. Maybe it was about something else. Maybe she misunderstood. The attorney will sign, the last chance. That could be explained in a dozen ways. She did not want to upset her mother over nothing. But tonight, when her father left for the birthday dinner earlier than her mother, Haley looked into his home office desk drawer simply because she could not take it anymore. She did not know what she was looking for. She found a printout, several pages held together by a paperclip. She read the first page, then the second, and then she called her mother. It says quitclaim deed, Mom, Haley said. For the condo, for our condo. And it has today's date. And it says the grantee is Grandma Eleanor. Victoria was silent. Mom, can you hear me? I hear you, sweetie. The Uber had pulled up to the curb. The driver was looking at his phone. Victoria opened the back door and got in, never stopping listening. Was there anything else in the drawer? Yes, some kind of letter. I didn't understand all the legal jargon, but there was a sentence saying that if you sign tonight at the party... Wait. They planned for you to sign this at the birthday dinner. A pause. I think so, yes, Mom. There was another piece of paper with the name Robert Blackwood, and underneath it said Notary Public and Attorney. And the time, 9 p.m. Victoria checked her watch. It was 8:45 p.m. The condo in question was bought 11 years ago, 3 years before Jason appeared in her life. Victoria was working as a financial analyst at a mid-sized firm in downtown Seattle, saved up for 3 years, took out a mortgage, and paid it off herself. It was a beautiful 2-bedroom in Queen Anne, with a great public high school 2 blocks away. When she and Jason got married, she never even brought up the idea of adding his name to the title. Why would she? It was hers. It was obvious. It was acquired before the marriage. Under Washington state community property laws, assets acquired before entering a marriage remain the separate property of that spouse. Victoria knew this. She had always been meticulous about these things. But she also knew that laws are written for those who read them, and documents have a way of taking on new meaning when there is an attorney nearby, a glass of champagne, and a relaxed woman at someone else's party. Haley, she said, find those papers, take photos of every single page, and text them to me. Then put them back exactly how they were, and do not go anywhere. Mom, are you coming home right now? Yes, I am. Are you scared? Victoria thought for a second. No, I'm not scared. I'm furious. That's different. As the Uber drove her through the evening city streets, Victoria looked out the window and thought. She and Jason had lived together for 8 years. The marriage was, as she used to think, normal. Not perfect, but normal. They did not have massive blowouts. They did not cheat. They did not have substance issues. They had a daughter, a shared household, routines. Jason worked in the tech sector, sometimes as a project manager, sometimes a partner, sometimes trying to launch his own startup. He was always a bit unfocused in a business sense, always starting something and never finishing it, always blaming external circumstances for his failures. Victoria earned a stable, high income. By that time, she had become a senior financial analyst at a major tech corporation. She was used to being reliable, used to keeping everything under control. Eleanor appeared in their daily lives 2 years after the wedding. Not that she literally appeared. She had always just been at a distance in Omaha, where Jason grew up. But then her husband passed away, and the mother-in-law was left alone. And Jason said his mother could not live there all by herself. It was cruel. Victoria did not argue. She found her mother-in-law a rental apartment nearby, helped with the move, and paid the first 3 months of rent. It seemed reasonable. It seemed like the right thing to do. She did not immediately realize what had happened. It was gradual, like water wearing away a stone, not with violent strikes, but with patient persistence. At first, Eleanor just came over often. Then she started coming over every day. Then it turned out she had an opinion on how Victoria cooked, how she cleaned, how she raised Haley, and how she treated her husband. Her opinions were always negative, delivered politely, subtly, with a smile, but invariably negative. "Oh, Jason, of course she's exhausted, poor thing. Her corporate job is so demanding," Eleanor would say in a tone of sympathy. And within that tone was the implication. A job is no excuse. A real wife finds time for everything. Jason listened to his mother. He always listened to his mother. It was his fundamental trait, the one Victoria initially mistook for family devotion and respect for his elders. Later she realized it was not love. It was a dependency. Soft, chronic, incurable. 3 years ago, something began to change. Jason started asking questions about the condo, cautiously, like a man testing the ice before stepping onto it. "Have you ever thought about putting the condo in both our names? We've been together for so many years after all. Mom says it's legally improper when a family's primary asset is only in one person's name." Victoria would answer calmly. "The condo was bought before marriage. It is her separate property. The law is on her side, and there is nothing to discuss." Jason did not push it. The topic would drift away and return a few months later in a different form. 2 years ago, Victoria discovered that one of the joint bank accounts Jason had access to was empty. Not entirely empty. There was some insignificant amount left, but $24,500 had vanished in small increments over a year and a half. Jason explained that he had invested it in a joint venture with a buddy. The project flopped. The money was lost. He was very sorry. Victoria did not scream or throw a fit. She revoked his access to that account and opened a new one solely in her name. After that conversation, they did not speak normally for 3 weeks. A year ago, Eleanor broke her arm. Nothing life-threatening. She slipped on the sidewalk, fractured her radius, and had a cast for 6 weeks. But for those 6 weeks, she lived in their apartment, because how else could she manage alone in that condition? Those 6 weeks Victoria remembered as being under siege. Her mother-in-law occupied the living room sofa, watched cable news until 1 in the morning, demanded special meals, voiced her opinions on how Haley did her homework, and had long, quiet conversations with Jason in the kitchen. Conversations that went dead silent the moment Victoria walked in. One sleepless night, Victoria lay awake wondering exactly when she became a stranger in her own home. She found no answer. But the next morning she called her friend Chloe, a corporate attorney, and asked if they could meet up just to talk. Just because. The Uber pulled up to her building. Victoria paid, tipped the driver, and stepped out into the dark courtyard. The streetlight above the entrance was flickering. They had not fixed it for 3 months. She took the elevator up to her floor, found her keys, and opened the door. Haley was waiting for her in the entryway. She stood straight, arms crossed over her chest, mimicking her mother's exact posture during tense moments, and looked at Victoria with that expression people get when they want to appear calm but are not quite succeeding yet. "Did you send the photos?" Victoria asked, taking off her trench coat. "Yes, all the pages. 7 total." "Good, you did great." She hugged her daughter tightly for a second and walked into the kitchen. She put the coffee maker on, unlocked her phone, and started reviewing the photos. It really was a quitclaim deed, drafted professionally, legally sound at first glance. The subject of the transfer was the condo at their exact address. The grantor was Victoria Davis. The grantee was Eleanor Davis. Victoria read it slowly, carefully, the way she read financial reports at work. Her fingers were completely steady, but something in her chest had clamped down and refused to let go. On the last page, there was a designated spot for a signature. Her signature was not there yet. The machine beeped. Victoria poured hot water over her tea bag, waited for it to steep, then picked up her phone and dialed Chloe's number. Calling late. Sorry. I have an urgent matter. Can you meet tomorrow morning? What happened? Her friend's voice instantly turned serious. I'll tell you tomorrow. But tell me now. If someone drafts a quitclaim deed for a property and brings it to be signed, and the person signs it in the presence of a notary, is it legally binding even if the property was acquired before marriage? A pause. Vicky, what is going on? Answer me first. Yes, it's binding. A property transfer is a voluntary transaction. If the legal owner signs, the property transfers to the grantee. It doesn't matter when or how it was originally acquired. Understood. Victoria placed her mug on the kitchen island. Tomorrow at 9 a.m., if you can. I am sending you the documents right now. Vicky, are you okay? Yes, I'm completely fine. See you tomorrow. She hung up and forwarded all 7 photos to Chloe. Then, she finished her tea, rinsed the mug, and went to Haley's room. To sit next to her, to talk, to tell her daughter what she needed to hear, that everything was going to be all right. Not because it was the conventional thing to say, but because Victoria had decided it would be. She did not know everything yet. She did not know that the quitclaim deed was only one part of the scheme, and far from the most dangerous part. She did not know that Robert Blackwood, whose name was on that paper, was not just any notary. She did not know that the $24,500 that vanished from the account 2 years ago would turn up in a completely unexpected place. And she did not know that in the morning, when Jason returned home from the birthday gala, he would be smiling because he believed everything had gone according to plan. But she knew the most important thing. The condo was still hers, and her signature was nowhere on those documents. And she had the entire night to prepare. That was enough. Jason returned around midnight. Victoria heard him opening the door cautiously, trying not to make noise. She was not sleeping. She lay in the dark and listened. Here he is, taking off his shoes in the entryway. Here he goes to the master bathroom. Here he quietly enters the bedroom. Are you awake? He whispered. No. I mean, yes. Haley is better. No fever. A brief pause. She felt him sit on the edge of the mattress. You left early. Yes, I was worried about her. Mom was upset, of course, he said, a slight tone of reproach in his voice. The kind she had grown used to over 8 years. It was her 70th birthday. I understand. Give her my apologies. He stayed silent for a bit longer, then lay down, turning on his side. Within minutes, his breathing grew steady. Victoria lay beside him, thinking about how easy it is to pretend. How easy it apparently is to live next to someone and not truly be with them. To act like everything is normal while a deed transferring your home sits in a desk drawer, while a shady attorney waits at your mother-in-law's party checking his watch. She thought about how everything would change tomorrow. She thought about how lucky it was that Haley had called. Outside the window, a light Seattle drizzle began to fall, quiet and methodical, the kind that does not stop until morning. Victoria closed her eyes. She did not intend to sleep. She had work to do. But a few hours of silence before getting started would not hurt. Somewhere across the city, Eleanor must have been awake too. Victoria wondered what she was thinking about. Was she thinking about the plan falling apart? Or how to fix it? Victoria smirked in the dark. Let her think. The morning will show who has more time. The rain outside did not stop until dawn. Victoria knew this for a fact. She did not close her eyes for a single hour. She lay there, listening to Jason's steady breathing, and thought. She thought methodically, sequentially, building in her head what she was best at building, the complete picture from scattered fragments. $24,500 missing from the account 2 years ago. Jason had explained back then. A bad investment, money lost, a partner let him down. Victoria accepted the explanation because she saw no point in destroying a marriage over money that could not be recovered. But now, that story occupied a completely different place in her mind. The quitclaim deed was drafted professionally. She read it twice on her phone under the covers while Jason slept beside her. Everything in the document was technically correct, the exact address, the parcel number, the party's legal details. The only things missing were her signature and the notary's seal. Robert Blackwood was supposed to show up at the birthday party at 9 p.m. At 9 p.m., Victoria was already sitting at home drinking tea. She thought about what would have happened if Haley had not called, if the plan had worked. She would have drank champagne, listened to toasts, smiled at the guests, and at some point, Jason or Eleanor would have approached her with some paperwork. "Vicky, just a quick formality. The attorney is here. He is about to leave. Just sign here. It is about the condo insurance, some refinancing thing. I do not remember exactly." Jason handled it. And she would have signed it because she trusted him, because she was used to her husband handling the household paperwork, because there was champagne and a party. And who reads the fine print on a night like that? She pictured it very clearly, and the clarity made her feel ice cold. At 5 a.m., when the sky outside began to lighten and the rain finally stopped, Victoria got up, dressed quietly in the dark, went to the kitchen, and turned on the light. Not bright, just the pendant lamp over the island. She opened her MacBook and got to work. First, she logged onto the King County Recorder's Office website and requested an official property title search for her condo. The electronic record was generated instantly. She needed it to be absolutely certain. The registry still showed only her name. No liens, no title transfers, no changes. Good. That meant they had not managed to do anything without her participation yet. Then she opened the file cabinet, the one she kept in her separate home office desk, always locked with a physical key. The original property deed, the old paper one issued before everything went digital, the purchase agreement, the mortgage payoff statements. She photographed every document and uploaded them to a secure cloud folder that Jason did not have access to. At 6:30, she heard Haley stirring in her room. "Mom!" Her daughter appeared in the kitchen doorway in an oversized t-shirt, hair completely messy. "Did you even sleep?" "A little." Haley looked at her for a long time, with that attentive gaze she had inherited from Victoria, which Victoria always noticed and was always slightly surprised by. "What are you doing?" "Preparing." "For what?" Victoria closed her laptop and looked at her daughter. "Sit down. I'll tell you everything. You're an adult. You have the right to know." Haley sat across from her. Victoria spoke evenly, without unnecessary emotion, the way she spoke at the office when explaining complex data analytics to executives. She laid out the facts, the quitclaim deed, the notary, the scheme that was supposed to unfold last night, the money that went missing 2 years ago, the connection between these events that she could not yet prove but could already clearly see. Haley listened in silence. When Victoria stopped talking, her daughter stared at the counter for a while. "He betrayed us," she said finally. Not with a dramatic breakdown, but with that calm, almost adult realization that is more bitter than any tears. "Yes. And Grandma Eleanor, too." "Yes." Haley nodded. She stood up and turned the coffee maker on. "What do we need to do?" "Aunt Chloe is coming over soon. We are going to make a plan." Chloe Simmons showed up at exactly 9:00 a.m., just as she promised, right on the dot. She was a compact, sturdy woman in her 40s, with a sharp bob haircut and a habit of looking at things with slightly narrowed eyes. Not out of suspicion, but from a professional habit of evaluating everything. She and Victoria had been friends since college at the University of Washington. Back then, Chloe was pre-law, and Victoria was an economics major. Their paths diverged after graduation, then crossed again a few years ago when Victoria asked for legal advice on a corporate contract. They had seen each other regularly ever since. Chloe walked in, hung her coat, and headed straight to the kitchen. She saw Haley and nodded to her. They knew each other well. "Show me," Chloe said to Victoria, skipping the pleasantries. Victoria unlocked her phone and handed it over. Chloe swiped through the photos in silence, occasionally zooming in on specific paragraphs. Her face remained unreadable. Only once, on the 3rd page, did she slightly raise an eyebrow. "Blackwood," she said, without taking her eyes off the screen. "Robert Blackwood. I know that name." "From where?" "He was at the center of a nasty scandal about 3 years ago. An attorney and notary public who certified real estate transfers that were later contested in civil court. He was never criminally convicted. They could not prove it beyond a reasonable doubt, but the state suspended his license to practice for 6 months. She handed the phone back. The document is drafted flawlessly. If you had signed it, contesting it would have been a nightmare. You would have had to prove in court that your signature was obtained through fraudulent inducement or that you were incapacitated and did not understand the nature of your actions. That takes years, costs a fortune in legal fees, and has zero guarantees. I know. Good thing I did not sign it. I did not sign it because I was not there. Chloe looked at her. Haley called, Victoria said. She found this deed in Jason's desk. Smart kid. Chloe glanced at Haley, who was sitting in the breakfast nook holding a mug with both hands. Very smart. Haley blushed slightly but stayed quiet. Now listen to me very carefully, Chloe told Victoria. The quitclaim deed you found is just the tip of the iceberg. Usually, these kinds of operations are not a one-step process. If Jason has been preparing this for over a year, and judging by how bulletproof the document is, it means there was groundwork, possibly other documents, possibly paperwork already filed somewhere. We need to check a few things. I already pulled the property records from the county. The title is clear. Good, but that is not enough. We need to check if a power of attorney was ever issued in your name. A general notarized power of attorney that would allow someone to act on your behalf. Victoria paused. How do we check that? Through the state registry. An official inquiry takes a few days, but I know someone at the Secretary of State's office. I will try to expedite it. Okay. And one more thing. Chloe's tone was even, without pressure, but Victoria sensed something crucial behind that calmness. You mentioned $24,000 went missing from an account 2 years ago. Yes. Do you still have the bank statements for that account? Yes. I keep all financial records. I definitely have the last 5 years. Bring them. Victoria got up, went to her office, and returned with a binder. Chloe took it, opened it on the island, and started flipping through the pages. Haley quietly cleared the empty mugs and slipped out of the room. Here, Chloe said a few minutes later, pointing at a line item. Look, wire transfers in small amounts, $500 to $2,000, recurring, going to the same recipient. I saw that. Jason said it was his business partner for the startup. The recipient is an individual. Chloe looked up. I can run a background check on this recipient through my firm's databases, unofficially, but I need your permission. Run it. And we need to talk about what you want to do next. Victoria leaned back in her chair. Outside the window, the morning sun was already shining bright. The rain really had stopped. The sky was clear, the way it only is after a torrential Seattle downpour. She looked at the sky and thought, I want to understand the complete picture, she finally said. Before making any moves, I need to know everything, every single detail. Then I will decide. That is rational. How much time do we have? Depends on Jason. He will be back this evening, most likely, or earlier if his mother calls and tells him the plan blew up. He does not know you are aware yet. No, I did not say a word last night. He came back from the party and went to sleep. He thinks I left because Haley was sick. Chloe nodded. Good. Let him think that. That is our advantage. As long as he thinks everything is fine, we have time. The day passed in motion, but not the nervous, chaotic motion of someone who does not know what to do. It was precise, sequential movement. Victoria was an analyst by profession and by nature. She knew how to work with data, how to prioritize, how not to panic even when everything inside her was freezing over. First stop, the bank. She drove there alone, leaving Haley at home. At the Chase branch, she asked the teller to print out full, detailed transaction histories for all the accounts she had access to and the joint ones Jason had used. The bank associate, a young woman with a neat ponytail, silently did her job without asking unnecessary questions. Victoria sat in the lobby chair and flipped through the thick stack of papers. The picture formed slowly, like an image developing on old photographic paper in a darkroom. First faint outlines, then sharper edges. The wire transfers to the recipient, Jason called his business partner, were regular over nearly 2 years. The last one was sent 4 months before Victoria cut off his access to the account. The total, she calculated quickly in her head, was exactly $24,500. She asked the teller to print out the routing and account details for the recipient. She received a piece of paper with the name Robert S. Blackwood. She froze. Blackwood! The same Blackwood, the attorney and notary who was supposed to show up at the 70th birthday gala to witness her signature on the quitclaim deed, was the very man Jason had been sending money to for 2 years. This was no coincidence. None of this was an accident. Victoria walked out of the bank, sat on the nearest bench in the public plaza, and called Chloe. Blackwood, she said the moment Chloe answered. Robert S. Blackwood. $24,500 over 2 years. Transfers from Jason. Silence on the other end of the line. He was paying the attorney, Chloe said slowly. Paying him for 2 years to show up at the exact right moment and authenticate the fraudulent transfer. And an attorney with a history. Exactly. Vicky, this is no longer just a messy divorce. This is a felony. Felony fraud under Washington state law. If Blackwood knew the deed was being prepared to defraud the legal owner, and judging by the money, he not only knew but actively facilitated it. This is organized criminal conspiracy. I understand. Are you ready to file a police report? Victoria watched the pigeons busily strutting across the concrete around her bench. The day was beautiful, sunny, almost warm. One of those rare days that pops up unexpectedly in the middle of autumn, making you forget for a few hours that winter is coming. Not right now, she said. First, I need the complete picture. I need to know exactly what else they managed to do. Then, yes, I am filing. Good. I ran the recipient through the databases. Come to my office by 1 p.m. Chloe worked out of a boutique law firm about 10 minutes from Victoria's neighborhood. A modern ground-floor office with a brass plaque on the door, Simmons Legal Consulting. Victoria had been here a few times. She walked in at 1 p.m. Chloe was sitting at her desk behind dual monitors. Next to her was a stack of printouts. Sit. Chloe turned the top sheet toward her. Robert S. Blackwood, 61 years old, licensed attorney and notary, practicing in the Seattle metro area for 8 years. You already know about the scandal 3 years ago. It ended with administrative discipline, a suspended license, some fines, nothing more. But I found something interesting. She handed Victoria the second page. 2 of those contested real estate transfers involved property that originally belonged to one spouse prior to marriage. The exact same playbook, a quitclaim deed, signed in front of him. Later, it would come to light that the signing spouse did not fully grasp the legal weight of the document or was actively deceived. In one case, the civil court reversed the transfer. In the other, it upheld it. So he has done this before. Looks like it is his specialty. Chloe leaned back in her chair. He apparently only works with people he trusts to keep quiet. Jason must have been referred by one of Blackwood's former clients. Whether Eleanor found him or Jason did, I do not know. But it does not matter for our purposes. They both had motive and opportunity. Victoria sat quietly, staring at the papers. Chloe, tell me honestly, if I had signed that deed last night, would I have had any chance of getting my condo back? Chloe did not rush to answer. Theoretically, yes. You could try to prove in court that the contract was signed under fraudulent inducement, that you were misled about the nature of the document. But in practice, it is incredibly difficult. An attorney officially certifies that he explained the contents of the document to all parties. The witnesses, the guests at the birthday party, all Eleanor's friends, would testify that you were sober, lucid, walked right up, and signed it of your own free will. A heavy pause. More likely than not, you would have lost the condo. The silence in the small office was so deep, they could hear a delivery truck rumble past the window. Okay, Victoria finally said. What do we do now? Right now, we lock down everything we have. Photos of the deed, bank statements, wire transfer receipts to Blackwood. This is your evidence file. Then, we wait for the inquiry on the power of attorney. I submitted it through my contact. We should have an answer by evening. Then we discuss filing the police report and how you want to handle the divorce with Jason. The divorce is entirely up to me? No, I mean, first I need to know what he might have done with the marital assets. The condo is yours, premarital property, but there is a car bought during the marriage. There is a high-yield savings account you have been funding for 3 years in your name. Furniture, appliances, minor things, but still. The car title is in my name. I bought it. Okay. That means there is not much to divide except community property acquired during the marriage. If you have documentation proving the savings account was funded solely by your paycheck, the court might classify it as separate property, though it is not automatic in Washington. I have the records. W-2S. Direct deposit receipts. Excellent. Chloe made a note. One more question, and I apologize for being blunt. Have you thought about custody? Where will Haley live? With me. That is non-negotiable. She is 16. At that age, a family court judge will give heavy weight to her preference. Her testimony alone will be enough. Chloe made another note. All right. So the main objectives: protect the real estate, legally document the fraud, and lay the groundwork for a divorce with minimal financial casualties. Yes. Then we need one more thing. Chloe looked at her intensely. The original copy of the quitclaim deed currently sitting in Jason's desk. This was the only part of the plan that required extreme caution. Not because she had to do anything illegal, the document was inside her own home, in the desk of a man she was legally married to. But Victoria understood that if Jason noticed the papers were missing or had been tampered with, he would realize she knew, and he would have time to pivot. She got back to the condo at 3:00 p.m. Haley was in her room, either doing homework or pretending to. Victoria did not check. She walked into the room Jason used as a home office, a small space with a desk and a bookshelf filled with business books he had never actually read. She opened the bottom drawer. The papers were exactly where Haley had found them, neatly paper-clipped. Victoria took out her phone and photographed everything again, this time much more meticulously, ensuring the lighting was perfect and every single word was legible. Then she placed the papers back exactly as they were, closed the drawer, and walked out. At 5 p.m., Chloe called. I have the information from the state registry. Her voice had a specific edge to it, the tone Victoria had learned to recognize over years of friendship, calm on the surface, entirely tense underneath. 7 months ago, a general power of attorney was issued in your name. Victoria stopped dead in the middle of the kitchen. What kind of power of attorney? Granting Jason Davis full authority to represent the property owner in real estate transactions, obtain legal documents, and file petitions on your behalf. Valid for 1 year. Notarized. Chloe. Victoria spoke slowly, enunciating every syllable. I did not issue any power of attorney. I know that. I have never done that. I have not even stepped foot inside a notary's office in years. Vicky, listen to me. This is critical. Think back. Did you sign any paperwork over the last year? In a rush? Without reading it? Because Jason asked you to? Victoria closed her eyes, searching her memory. Human memory is a strange thing. It does not store mundane moments the way it stores trauma. Routine actions, signing something, running an errand, fulfilling a quick request, fade quickly because they do not seem important. That is exactly what scammers rely on. A year ago, she finally said. Eleanor broke her arm and was staying with us. Jason kept asking me to sign various papers for his new LLC, for some tech incubator project. He said he needed my signature as a spousal consent form. I signed them. I did not read the fine print. How many times? 3 or 4. I do not remember exactly. One of those documents was the power of attorney. Yes, it must have been. A pause. Vicky, this escalates it. This is not just civil fraud. This is forgery, identity theft, and grand larceny, if he utilized that POA to move any assets. We need to immediately check what he has done using this POA over the last 7 months. He could have already finalized a transfer. He could have taken out a home equity loan. The title search I pulled this morning, it only had my name. No liens, nothing. That means he has not pulled the trigger on the condo yet. But with that POA, he could request official records, negotiate with attorneys, set up the framework. Blackwood was working with him legally, based on that exact POA. That explains why the quitclaim deed was so perfectly drafted. He had official documentation proving he acted on your behalf. Victoria exhaled slowly. Chloe, tell me exactly what I need to do right now. Right now? You revoke that power of attorney, officially and legally, at any notary public, not Blackwood. Today, before they close, if you can make it, as long as it is active, he has power. Where's the closest one? I am texting you an address. The local notary and legal services office down the street was open until 6 p.m. Victoria made it. At 5:20 p.m., she was sitting across from a notary, an older woman with neatly styled hair and thin-rimmed glasses, explaining the situation. The notary listened intently. When Victoria finished, the woman stayed silent for a few seconds, rearranging some papers on her desk. You understand that the revocation of a power of attorney technically takes full effect once the authorized party is formally notified? She asked. I understand. Meaning you will have to inform your husband. I am aware. I am ready. All right. We will draft the revocation of power of attorney. A copy will be logged in the county records. From this moment on, the legal authority is terminated, regardless of his awareness, but he must be notified to prevent third-party reliance. She started typing. And I want to tell you something off the record. Not as a legal professional. Victoria looked up. Be very careful tonight, the notary said, keeping her eyes on her monitor. When a man realizes his scam has collapsed, he can become extremely unpredictable. Victoria nodded. Thank you. She walked out of the office at 5:45 p.m., holding a legally certified revocation of power of attorney. She called Chloe. It is done. Perfect. The registry will update by tomorrow morning. A pause. Vicky, one more thing. I consulted with a colleague today who specializes in criminal defense. He says we have absolute grounds to file a police report for felony fraud and the use of forged legal documents. If Blackwood was authenticating documents using a POA that Jason obtained through deception, Blackwood is a co-conspirator. When can we file the report? First thing tomorrow. But talk to Jason first. Why? Because his reaction is evidence. What he says when he realizes, Record the conversation. Vicky, do you have a voice memo app on your iPhone? I do. Use it. Washington is a two-party consent state for recording, but there is an exception for conversations conveying threats of extortion, blackmail, or bodily harm. Just let it run, and if he threatens you, it is admissible. Even if not, it will tell us exactly what his defense strategy is. Victoria put her phone away. She stood outside the notary's office, watching the Seattle street. Pedestrians hurried past, wrapped up in their own worlds, heading to their own destinations. Nobody knew what was happening. Nobody looked her way. She called an Uber and went home. Jason arrived at 7 p.m. Victoria heard the heavy lobby door shut, then his footsteps in the hall. He always walked heavily, slightly dragging his right foot. She was sitting at the kitchen island. There were 2 mugs of hot tea on the counter. Her iPhone lay next to her, screen down. The voice recorder was already running. Haley had received a text. Go to your room, put headphones on, and do not come out until I text you. Her daughter replied with one word, understood. Jason took off his jacket in the mudroom, walked into the kitchen, saw Victoria, and the 2 mugs. Oh, he said, his voice carrying its usual domestic warmth. You are home. I thought you would be working late. No, I am home. Sit down. He tensed up slightly. Barely noticeable, almost imperceptibly. But Victoria knew how to spot these things. She had been observing him in her mind's eye all morning, and now she saw him completely differently. It was as if a filter had been removed. A filter that for 8 years had distorted the picture to make it look comfortable and pleasant. He was an objectively handsome man. Symmetrical features, light eyes, a winning smile. She remembered the first time she saw him at a mutual friend's cocktail party, how reliable he seemed. That very first impression, which ultimately turned out to be a facade. What is going on? He asked, sitting on the bar stool. Nothing special. Victoria pushed a mug toward him. I wanted to talk. About what? About the power of attorney. You secretly drew up in my name 7 months ago. Silence. It was a very specific type of silence. Not just the absence of noise, but the profound quiet that happens the exact moment a person realizes the ground has vanished beneath their feet, and they have not yet decided how to fall. Jason sat completely still. His facial expression did not change, but something happened behind his eyes, something fast and cold. I have no idea what you are talking about, he finally said. You do. Victoria spoke calmly. Not quietly, but calmly. They are very different things. Robert S. Blackwood, attorney at law. $24,500 wired from you to him over 2 years. A quitclaim deed for my condo. Fully prepared for my signature last night at your mother's 70th birthday dinner. A power of attorney. Notarized by Blackwood 7 months ago, which you slipped into a pile of papers for me to sign while Eleanor was living with us. Every word dropped into the silence individually, sharply, like heavy coins hitting a glass table. Jason stayed silent. He stared at her, then looked out the window, looking at nothing. Vicky, you misunderstood everything. Then enlighten me. It is more complicated than it looks. It was Mom's idea. She thought it was more responsible from an estate planning perspective, that the primary residence should be. She held up her hand. You are sitting here telling me this was your mother's idea? She thought that if something happened to us, if we got divorced, then. If we got divorced, Victoria repeated slowly. Then the condo that I bought before we ever met, and paid off with my own salary, should be handed over to your mother. That was her brilliant idea. It sounded incredibly ugly, spoken out loud. Jason. She looked him dead in the eye. You do realize this is called felony fraud, right? He met her gaze. Nothing happened. You did not sign anything. There is no crime. Conspiracy to commit fraud is a felony. Preparing forged documents is a felony. She spoke smoothly, without raising her voice. But that is not even the point. The point is the power of attorney existed. For 7 months, you operated under my name, with legal authority over my assets, without my knowledge. That is not preparation, that is the crime. Jason looked at her, and his eyes shifted again. Calculation. She saw the raw calculation. Not remorse, not confusion, but a cold, rapid assessment of his options. He was running the numbers on what was more profitable, denying it, partially admitting it, or going on the offensive. Vicky, he said in a different tone, softer, conciliatory. Let's just talk like adults. We can resolve this without making a mess. I know how it looks. I already revoked the power of attorney, she said. Today, the county registry will be fully updated by morning. A pause. I have drafted a police report. That was not entirely true. The report was just a plan at this point, but she said it intentionally. I am submitting it to the precinct tomorrow. Vicky. His voice morphed again. Now something else bled into it. Not calculation, not softness, but something she had recognized before but always chose to ignore. A threat masked in reason. You realize this will destroy everything. The family, Haley. She is going to have to grow up in a broken home. Haley is practically an adult. Victoria stood up slowly, deliberately, and she knows everything. I told her this morning. He stared up at her from the bar stool. You dragged a child into this? She found the quitclaim deed in your desk drawer yesterday evening. That is exactly why she called me and told me to get out of that dinner. The silence stretched out long and agonizing. Victoria picked up her phone from the counter and slipped it into her pocket. She would stop the recording later. I am going to check on Haley, she said. If you want to negotiate, you can call Chloe Simmons. You know her number. She is my attorney now. I am no longer speaking to you directly about any of this. She walked out of the kitchen. Behind her back, Jason said absolutely nothing. Haley was waiting for her, sitting cross-legged on her bed, hugging her knees to her chest. When Victoria walked in, she looked up, her eyes anxious and hyper-alert. Everything okay? Haley asked. Everything is fine. What did he say? Exactly what I expected. Victoria sat on the edge of the bed next to her. Nothing new. He will probably try to pull some maneuver, but we have already outpaced him. She looked at her daughter. Listen, you did a massive thing for me today. Not just yesterday when you called, but today, by finding those papers and keeping your head straight. Haley shrugged. That classic teenage gesture meant to brush off praise they actually desperately need to hear. You would have done the same thing, I hope. Through the wall, it was dead quiet. Victoria guessed Jason was already on the phone with his mother, explaining the fallout, asking for advice. Eleanor would be giving orders in her flat, level voice, her cold pebble eyes staring at the wall. Let them strategize. Tomorrow morning, she was going to the police. She had the bank statements, the photos of the deed, the records of the POA. Chloe had her written statement prepped. She had the audio recording of tonight's conversation, where Jason effectively admitted to the conspiracy. even if he tried to rebrand it, and she had her daughter by her side. "Mom," Haley said quietly, "why aren't you crying?" Victoria thought about it. "No," she said, "I'm not crying." "Why?" "Probably because the time for crying comes later. Right now, I'm busy." Haley sat quietly, then unexpectedly rested her head on her mother's shoulder. Victoria felt the weight of it, familiar, grounding. Exactly the same as 8 years ago, when a much smaller Haley used to fall asleep against her. "Mom, what happens next?" "I don't know all the details yet, but I'm certain about the big picture." "Why?" "We're staying in this condo. You're going to finish at your high school with your friends, and we'll figure out the rest from there." Outside the window, evening settled over Seattle. The room was quiet and a bit chilly. Victoria had not turned on the overhead light. Somewhere deep in the apartment, the heavy front door clicked shut. Jason had left. Where? To his mother's? To a hotel? She did not know and did not care to guess. It did not matter anymore. What mattered was tomorrow. Tomorrow morning, the Seattle Police Department, filing charges for fraud and forgery. Then meeting Chloe to map out the legal assault. Then the divorce proceedings. It would be long and nasty. But she had dealt with long, nasty projects her whole life, and she was used to seeing things through to the end. She never quit halfway. "Are you hungry?" she asked Haley. "Starving. Let's make something." They stood up. Haley flipped on the bright kitchen lights. Victoria opened the stainless steel fridge, scanning the shelves. Ordinary things: eggs, cheddar cheese, some leftovers. Life, which insists on continuing over the top of any earthquake, because people need to eat every day, and that is a good thing. "Will an omelet work?" she asked. "It will work," Haley nodded, and a second later added, "Mom, you are a badass, you know that?" Victoria pulled out a skillet. "I know," she said, "but that is not the most important part." "What is?" "The most important part is that you are too." Haley smiled for the first time in 24 hours. And Victoria thought that there are, in fact, things that cannot be stolen by any quitclaim deed or forged power of attorney. Things that cannot be notarized or locked in a desk drawer. She cracked an egg against the edge of the pan. Outside, it was completely dark. A new day was starting. Not quite tomorrow yet, but almost. Morning arrived before the alarm clock. Victoria woke up at 6:40 a.m. and lay staring at the ceiling for a few seconds, listening to the silence of the apartment. Jason had not returned. His side of the bed was untouched, as if he had never existed. Somewhere between last night and this morning's sunrise, she had made her final decision. Not with her brain. Her brain had made the decision 2 nights ago. This was decided in that deeper place inside. The place that governs things that can no longer be undone. She got up, took a shower, and dressed carefully. Not overdressed, but meticulously. There is a difference. Dark slacks, a crisp white blouse, a tailored blazer. When you walk into a government building with serious business, you dress the part. It is not vanity. It is respect for the process and for yourself. Haley was still asleep. Victoria peeked into her room. Her daughter was curled up, one hand tucked under her cheek. Victoria quietly pulled the door shut. In the kitchen, she left a post-it note on the island, at the police precinct. Then Chloe's office. "Eat a real breakfast. Do not leave the house until I text you. Everything is fine." She placed a coffee mug over the edge of the note. She walked out of the condo at 7:30. The local Seattle police precinct was a 15-minute walk away. A gray, brutalist building with a perpetually stained facade and a perpetually annoyed desk sergeant behind bulletproof glass. Victoria had been here once, years ago, when someone smashed her car window and stole her gym bag. They found nothing, closed the case. She had not been particularly surprised then. She walked in and stated her business. "I need to file a report for felony fraud and forgery." And she waited. She had to wait about 40 minutes, which by the standards of municipal bureaucracy was a miracle. Then she was escorted to a cramped office on the second floor, where a young detective in his early 30s sat behind a metal desk. He had a buzz cut and the exhausted aura of a man whose shift had started sometime during the previous presidency. "Detective Miller," he introduced himself. "Have a seat. What can I do for you?" Victoria pulled the printed report from her leather folio. Chloe had helped draft it over the phone the night before, using precise statutory language and citing the revised Code of Washington. She slid it across the desk. Miller read it slowly. As he read, his face changed, not out of shock, as seasoned cops are rarely shocked by paperwork, but because the narrative was locking into a shape he instantly recognized. He read like a professional, skimming the whole thing first, then returning to specific paragraphs. "So, the attorney is Robert Blackwood," he said, not looking up. "Robert S. Blackwood. A pause. "I know that name." "I assume you do. He had a highly publicized issue about 3 years ago." Miller looked up. "Are you a lawyer?" "No, a financial analyst. But I did my homework." He gave a half smile. Not mocking, but appreciative. "Do you have the bank statements?" "Yes." She pulled out the spreadsheets. Every wire transfer to Blackwood over the last 2 years. Dates, amounts, routing numbers, photos of the fraudulent quitclaim deed. "Printed and on your phone?" "Yes. And an audio recording of my husband admitting to the scheme." "Yes." Miller stared at the stack of evidence growing on his desk. "You came prepared," he finally said. "I am used to presenting data." He grabbed an official incident report form. "All right, let's get this formally on the record. This will take some time. Are you in a rush?" "I have nowhere else to be." She walked out of the precinct a little after 10 a.m., holding a card with an incident number. The official processing time was up to 10 days, but Miller assured her that cases with named suspects, paper trails, and wire transfers get fast-tracked by the district attorney's office. "One question," Victoria said before leaving. "Can my husband pull strings to kill this?" "He has connections. Not in the department, but business connections." Miller looked at her dead on. "In this precinct? With me? No. I cannot speak for the rest of the world, but you just handed me a slam-dunk paper trail. This is not going away." A pause. "Is Chloe Simmons your attorney?" "Yes, she is excellent. I have dealt with her firm before." He stood up and offered his hand. "Keep her in the loop on every move." "I will." She walked out onto the pavement and called Chloe. Filed. "Good. I am at the office. Come over." Chloe met her at the door with a fresh Americano, as if she knew Victoria had skipped breakfast. "Sit down. We have news." Victoria sank into the leather guest chair and took the cup. The coffee was black, bitter, and exactly what she needed. "Jason called," Chloe said. "You?" "No, me." Victoria looked up. "How does he have your number?" "You gave him my business card a few years ago when I reviewed that NDA for his startup. He kept it." "What did he say?" Chloe put her own mug down. "He called bright and early, 7:30. Started off very calm, said he wanted to handle things amicably, that he is open to mediation, that the situation just got blown out of proportion and he regrets it." She paused. "Then, when I told him we had already filed a felony police report." "You told him that?" "I was still waiting in the lobby. I assumed and bluffed. It worked." His tone completely changed. "He said I did not know who I was messing with. Claimed his mother has heavy connections in the State Bar Association and that they can spin this entire thing." Chloe looked at her evenly. "Then he added that if you want a war, you are going to get one, and that he knows exactly how to ensure he gets full custody of Haley in the divorce." Silence. Victoria placed her cup on the desk. "He is an idiot," she repeated. "Yes. Haley is not going anywhere with him. She is 16. A judge will ask her directly where she wants to live. I told him exactly that." He shut up and hung up. Victoria looked out the window. Ordinary morning life was happening on the Seattle streets. Pedestrians, delivery drivers, someone walking a golden retriever. She thought about how the threat regarding Haley was specifically designed to knock her off balance, to strike the most painful nerve. It was a cheap, desperate tactic. She had seen it during hostile corporate takeovers. When the opposition realizes they are losing on the merits, they start looking for emotional leverage. Which meant he already knew he was losing. "Chloe," she said, "I need to file the divorce papers immediately, before he has time to invent a new angle. I drafted the petition last night." Chloe opened a manila folder. "If there were no asset disputes, we could file a simple dissolution. But you have disputes. Big ones." I am filing the petition in King County Superior Court, demanding an unequal distribution of community property. The car, the savings. We will argue the savings are your separate property. And the 24 grand he wired to Blackwood? That is community property too. Exactly. And that is a separate cause of action. Dissipation of marital assets. Under Washington law, spending community funds on non-marital, fraudulent purposes without the spouse's consent is grounds for reimbursement. He was draining your joint accounts. That justifies demanding a dollar-for-dollar offset in the asset split. So we are hitting him with two fronts: the criminal investigation against him in Blackwood and the civil divorce suit clawing back the stolen money. Victoria nodded. File both. I am finalizing the paperwork now. I need your signature on a few affidavits. And one more thing. Chloe paused. We need to legally document what Haley overheard 3 days ago. Her testimony is crucial. If this goes to trial, it could be the linchpin. She is ready to testify. I asked her yesterday. She is a minor, so in court, she would be interviewed in chambers or with a guardian ad litem present, away from you and Jason. Standard protocol. But we can take a sworn, notarized affidavit from her right now. Do it. They worked for another 2 hours. Chloe spoke quickly, precisely, without any fluff. It was exactly what Victoria valued in professionals. She signed where instructed, clarified details, and thought about how good it is to have someone in your corner who knows exactly what they are doing. At 1 p.m., Victoria left the law firm and texted Haley. Heading home. We need to talk, but nothing bad. Haley replied instantly. Kay, I made mac and cheese, saved you a bowl. Victoria smiled. Her daughter was waiting for her in the kitchen, wearing sweatpants and a hoodie, her hair pulled up in a messy bun. The mac and cheese was covered on the stove, a school notebook open on the island. Doing homework? Victoria asked, hanging up her blazer. Trying to. Hard to focus. Haley got up and popped a bowl into the microwave. How did it go? Police report filed and accepted. Chloe is pushing the divorce petition through the courts. Haley nodded, pulling the bowl out and setting it in front of her mother. He texted me, she said. Dad. Victoria froze. When? Like 2 hours ago. I did not reply. Then he sent a huge paragraph. Look. Haley handed over her iPhone. Victoria read it. The iMessage was a wall of text. Jason wrote that the situation was more complex than it seemed, that he had no choice, that he was only trying to protect the family's future, that Victoria misunderstood his intentions, and that he needed to speak with Haley privately, without her mother around. Victoria handed the phone back. You are not going to reply. I was not planning on it. Haley took her own bowl and sat across the counter. Mom, he wrote that he wants me to come live with him. Can he actually force that? Theoretically, he can file for primary physical custody, but you are 16. In Washington state, the judge is required to give substantial weight to the preference of an older teenager. It is your choice, and no one can drag you away. My choice is I am staying with you. I just know I will have to say that officially to some judge. Probably. Chloe explained that you might be interviewed by a court evaluator or a judge in their office, without me in the room. It is to make sure neither parent is coaching you. Haley was quiet for a moment. I can handle it. I know you can. They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Outside, it was overcast again. The Pacific Northwest autumn was reclaiming its territory methodically, without any drama. Victoria ate and thought about how Jason deliberately targeted his daughter because the direct route through Victoria was blocked. He viewed his own child as a soft vulnerability. It was a fatal miscalculation. Haley was the absolute last place he would find weakness. I have a serious question for you, Victoria said, setting her fork down. Chloe says your account of the phone call you overheard could be critical evidence. We can record it officially as a sworn affidavit. Are you willing to do that? Haley looked at her. Is it important to win? It could be the deciding factor. Then yes. A pause. I will tell them exactly what I heard, word for word, how I remembered it. Do you remember the exact words? I wrote it down, Haley said. The exact same day. As soon as I stepped back out into the hallway, I typed it all into the Notes app on my phone. Time, date, and quotes. because I knew I had to lock it in before I forgot. Victoria stared at her daughter. You wrote it down? She repeated slowly. Yeah. I did not know if it would ever be useful, but I figured it was better to have it. A 16-year-old kid steps out into an apartment hallway, completely shell-shocked by a betrayal she just uncovered, and her first instinct is to open her notes app and log the evidence verbatim with a timestamp. Victoria felt something hot rise in her throat. Not tears, something else. A surge of pride so sharp it almost physically ached. Text me those notes right now, she finally said. Already sent. Victoria's phone chimed on the counter. The day unspooled layer by layer, the way things do when long-delayed actions are finally set into motion. At 3 p.m., Chloe called to say the divorce petition was finalized and needed an e-signature. At 4 p.m., Detective Miller texted, Blackwood has been brought in for questioning tomorrow morning. Short, official, but it meant momentum. And a little after 4, the doorbell rang. Victoria walked to the entryway with that specific feeling you get when you don't know who is behind the door, but your gut already has a solid guess. She looked through the peephole. Eleanor Davis was standing in the hall. Alone, no Jason. Wearing a tailored wool coat, a designer handbag over her arm, and an expression Victoria knew very well. Placid, almost polite. The exact face her mother-in-law wore when she was about to deliver a calculated insult. Victoria unlocked the deadbolt and opened the door. Eleanor. Vicky. Her mother-in-law offered a tight, restrained smile. She cleared her throat. May I come in? We need to talk. You can speak from out there. The smile faltered for a fraction of a second, then snapped back into place. You do not want to let me in? I understand. Your house, your rules. She paused. I did not come here to fight. I came to explain. I am listening. Eleanor stood a little straighter. A familiar gesture Victoria had witnessed dozens of times. A woman accustomed to dominating the space. Jason made a mistake. I recognize that. But you have to understand, we were thinking about the family. About protecting the assets, so they wouldn't just vanish. Anything can happen in life. Illness, lawsuits, emergencies. An expensive property that is legally tied only to you. An expensive property that is legally tied only to me. Victoria cut her off, her voice flat. Is my separate property, purchased prior to the marriage. Washington State Community Property Law. Vicky. Eleanor, I will be completely blunt with you. You are not here to explain anything. You are here to gauge the damage and see if you can put out the fire before it burns your house down. So I will save you the trouble. The felony police report is already filed. The divorce papers are with the court. Robert Blackwood is being interrogated by detectives tomorrow morning. There is nothing left to fix. Her mother-in-law stared at her. Something in her face genuinely fractured. The smile did not disappear entirely, but it became a lifeless mask. You are going to destroy this family, she finally hissed. I did not destroy the family. You and Jason did. Haley is going to lose her father. Haley will tell the family court judge exactly where she wants to live. Victoria rested her hand on the edge of the door. That is her legal right. She is 16. Are you brainwashing her against us? No. She saw the forged deed and heard Jason's phone call with her own ears. She made the decision to call me at your party all by herself. Eleanor was silenced. It was a different kind of silence. Not a tactical pause before the next argument, but the sound of ice cracking on a frozen lake. Robert is an innocent man, she said, shifting tactics. He was just doing a favor. An attorney and notary public who authenticates a power of attorney obtained through deception and who accepts $24,000 in wire transfers from an interested party over 2 years is not doing a favor. Victoria looked her dead in the eye. That is felony forgery and conspiracy to commit fraud. I am telling you this as someone who spent the entire night researching the state penal code. The silence dragged out. Vicky, Eleanor said, her voice dropping to a harsh whisper. Can't we just settle this like human beings? You drafted a quitclaim deed to steal my home and put it in your name. You hired a crooked lawyer. You invited me to your 70th birthday gala specifically so that, surrounded by your friends and drinking champagne, I would sign a legal document without understanding what it was. A pause. That was your version of acting like a human being. No response. Goodbye, Eleanor. Victoria shut the door. She stood in the entryway for a few seconds, listening to the silence on the other side. Then she heard footsteps retreating down the hall, slow, heavier than usual. Haley peeked out from the living room. "I heard that," she said. "I know. You wrecked her." "I told the truth." Victoria walked into the kitchen and poured a glass of water. "It is not that hard." The next few days felt like a massive corporate audit, high pressure, multi-tiered, requiring absolute focus. It was the exact environment Victoria thrived in. Chloe filed the divorce and asset division lawsuit. The demands were ruthless and fully documented. Victoria retained the condo as separate premarital property. She demanded the vehicle, compensating Jason for half its depreciated value. She secured her high-yield savings. And the kill shot, a formal demand for a $24,500 offset from Jason's share of the community assets, citing dissipation of marital funds, backed by the wire transfers to Blackwood. The criminal investigation moved faster than Victoria anticipated. Detective Miller called on the third day. Blackwood came in for his interview, he reported curtly. He is talking a lot, sweating. What exactly is he saying? "I cannot compromise an active investigation, but I will tell you this. He is highly motivated to paint himself as a victim who was misled by a client." A pause. "Your soon-to-be ex-husband is scheduled for an interview next week." Victoria thanked him and hung up. When she relayed the update to Chloe, the lawyer nodded. Classic prisoner's dilemma. Blackwood knows if he takes the fall, he faces permanent disbarment and a felony conviction. It is much safer for him to cooperate with the DA and throw the mastermind, Jason, under the bus, which is exactly what he is doing. This is brilliant for us. Brilliant how? Because a confession from a legal professional explaining the mechanics of the fraud from the inside is worth 10 times more than circumstantial evidence. It locks Jason in. On the 5th day after the police report was filed, Jason showed up at the condo unannounced. Victoria was at the office. Haley was at school. He let himself in with the spare key Victoria had forgotten to confiscate. He was inside for maybe 20 minutes and left with some clothes, his MacBook, and a stack of files from the home office. Haley noticed things were missing when she got home and immediately called her mom. Victoria rushed back and audited the apartment. Some files were missing from the desk. She noticed instantly, but it did not matter. She had digitized and encrypted everything into the cloud on night 1. But the sheer violation of him entering her home behind her back crossed a line. She called a local Seattle locksmith and had the Schlage deadbolts replaced that same evening. Standard procedure. The legal owner has the right to change the locks. Jason was not on the deed. He never was. His key now opened nothing but thin air. The preliminary divorce hearing in King County Family Court was set 3 weeks later. During those 3 weeks, several things happened. First, Jason hired an attorney, a flashy guy whose face was plastered on bus stop benches around Seattle. The attorney reached out to Chloe multiple times, pushing for a closed-door settlement. Chloe politely declined every time, stating that an out-of-court settlement was not in her client's best financial or legal interest. Second, Eleanor called Haley from an unknown number. Haley did not recognize the voice at first. When she did, she simply said, "Grandma, I am not talking to you right now," and hung up. Then she blocked the number and told her mom. Victoria nodded and did not make a big deal out of it, because it was Haley's boundary to set, and she respected it. Third, Blackwood fully rolled over and gave a sworn statement to the DA's office. Chloe got the inside track through her network. The scheme was laid out exactly as they suspected. Jason found Blackwood through a sketchy tech bro buddy who had used him to hide assets during a divorce. For a year and a half, Jason paid a monthly retainer. Then they drafted the fake power of attorney, and finally the quitclaim deed. Blackwood claimed he was just drafting documents per his client's instructions and didn't know the wife was unaware. "That won't save him," Chloe scoffed over the phone. "An attorney is legally obligated to verify consent, not just blindly notarize a hostile property transfer. He is an accessory to fraud, period. What is he looking at? Disbarment is guaranteed. Criminally? Depends on the plea deal. If they hit him with conspiracy, he could face up to 5 years, but since he flipped, he will probably get probation." And Jason? Jason is the architect. First-degree fraud, plus identity theft for the forged POA. up to 10 years. But realistically, as a first-time white-collar offender, the judge might give him a suspended sentence or probation. We will see. Victoria listened to this with total detachment. No joy, no malice, just absolute calm. She had stopped wasting energy on being angry. Anger is an expensive commodity, and she needed it for other things. The day of the final divorce decree was crisp and clear, one of those stunning Pacific Northwest autumn days where Mount Rainier looks like it is hovering right over the city. Victoria wore the same tailored blazer she wore to the police precinct. Chloe was waiting by the courthouse, metal detectors holding a legal briefcase and 2 Pike Place coffees. Jason was in the gallery with his billboard lawyer, wearing a sharp suit and his public face, the one he used to pitch investors. Victoria looked at him for a second, then looked right through him. Not because it hurt, but because he simply no longer occupied any meaningful space in her reality. The family court judge, a no-nonsense woman in her 50s with sharp eyes, called the docket precisely on time. That alone was a good omen. Both sides presented. Jason's lawyer spun a sob story about Jason's sweat equity in the marriage, arguing that his non-financial contributions entitled him to a share of the real estate. It was boilerplate garbage. Chloe dismantled it surgically. She presented the original deed. Premarital asset. Paid exclusively from Victoria's W-2 income. She presented the car, offering to buy out his half. Then she dropped the hammer. The wire transfers. She submitted the bank records and the active felony docket number against Jason, demanding a dollar-for-dollar reimbursement for the dissipation of marital assets. Jason's lawyer objected, whining that there was no criminal conviction yet. The judge looked at him over her reading glasses. "Counselor, I don't need a criminal conviction to read a bank statement. Are these wire transfers accurate?" "Yes, Your Honor, but..." Then the offset applies. The judge called a brief recess. Victoria sat on a wooden bench in the corridor, scrolling through an Excel sheet on her phone for work. It was an old habit. Whenever forced to wait, she defaulted to data to keep her mind from wandering into dark corners. Jason approached her alone. His lawyer was down the hall. "Vicky." She looked up. "I have zero interest in talking to you. 1 minute. Just give me 1 minute." She locked her phone, looked at him, and waited. "I never meant to hurt you," he said. "I just wanted..." He trailed off. "Mom convinced me that keeping the condo in the family trust was the smart move, that it was the responsible thing to do, that you would eventually understand if I signed it?" Victoria finished for him. He stared at the marble floor. "I never thought it would end up in court. I never thought." "Jason," she said quietly, without an ounce of rage, "you wired money to a crooked lawyer for 2 years. You slipped a fake power of attorney into a stack of LLC papers. You explicitly plotted to steal my home. That was not an impulse. That was a calculated, multi-year operation." He had nothing to say. "I'm done listening to you," she said. "Not because I'm mad, because you literally have nothing left to say." She unlocked her phone and went back to her spreadsheet. He stood there like a ghost for 5 seconds, then walked away. The ruling was issued that afternoon. Marriage dissolved. The Seattle condo remained the sole, separate property of Victoria Davis. The vehicle was awarded to Victoria, with Jason receiving half its Blue Book value. And the coup de grace. Jason was ordered to forfeit $24,500 from his share of the remaining joint accounts to reimburse Victoria for the stolen funds. Jason's lawyer immediately threatened to appeal. Chloe smiled the serene smile of an apex predator. "Let them appeal," she told Victoria as they walked out onto the plaza. "They have zero legal standing on the real estate. That is bulletproof. They might try to haggle over the cash offset, but the core ruling stands." "Good," Victoria said. "How are you holding up?" Chloe asked. Victoria stopped and looked up at the Seattle sky. The blue was giving way to the dark grays of evening clouds. "I am good," she said. "Tired, but good. It was a successful day." It was. A pause. "Chloe, thank you." "Do not thank me. You built the case. I just filed the paperwork." Victoria shook her head. "You did a hell of a lot more than file paperwork. You know that." Chloe smiled that knowing smile smart people use to accept a compliment without arguing. "Go home," she said. "Go back to Haley." Haley was not waiting in the entryway this time. She was sprawled on the living room sofa, reading a textbook. She looked up when the deadbolt clicked. Well? Marriage dissolved. The condo is legally secured. The stolen money is clawed back. Haley slowly closed her textbook. So we won. We won. Haley stood up and hugged her mom. It was a slightly awkward, lanky teenage hug, the kind that happens when there are too many emotions and not enough words. Victoria hugged her back, fiercely, in silence. Mom, Haley mumbled into her shoulder. I am really glad I called you that night. Me too. Victoria pulled back slightly and looked at her daughter. Though honestly, you probably would have figured out a way to stop it yourself. Haley nodded. What happens now? Now, the criminal justice system handles the rest. The DA is prosecuting them. Jason might try to appeal the civil ruling, but Chloe says it is a dead end. Victoria walked into the kitchen and opened the fridge. But right now, dinner. And I am actually cooking a real meal tonight, not just eggs. Wow. Character development, Haley said, completely deadpan. Do not get smart with me. I am not getting smart. I am stating a factual observation. Victoria pulled out the groceries and laid them on the granite counter. Haley hopped up onto a bar stool, her favorite spot, and watched her mother prep. Mom? Are you sad at all? About him, I mean. 8 years is a long time. Victoria stopped. It was an honest question, and it deserved a brutally honest answer. I'm a little sad, she finally said. But not the way you think. Not about losing him. I'm sad about the illusion. Grieving the 8 years I thought were one thing, but were actually something else. It's a different kind of grief. Yeah, different. Victoria started chopping vegetables, relying on muscle memory so she didn't have to look at the knife. But you know what I actually think? I think 8 years is not wasted time. It is just a chapter that ended. It had meaning, if for no other reason than it gave me you. Haley was quiet. Are you just saying that like a Hallmark card to make me feel better? No, I am saying it because it is the empirical truth. Victoria glanced up at her. Learn the difference. One is politeness, the other is reality. Haley studied her mom's face for a second. Then she nodded. Outside, the streetlights flickered on. The apartment was warm, not just from the HVAC, but from the simple weight of presence. Life was continuing. Not the life they used to have, but a new one, an authentic one, without forged documents or parasites living in the shadows. Their own life. The criminal sentencing came down 4 months later. Robert Blackwood had his law license permanently revoked by the Washington State Bar Association before the trial even concluded. It happened quietly, without fanfare, the way professional institutions quietly purge their liabilities. 8 years of practice, a corner office, a brass plaque, all gone in an afternoon. In criminal court, he pled out and got 3 years of felony probation and a lifetime ban from holding any fiduciary office. Chloe said he got off light, but given his cooperation with the prosecutors, it was expected. Jason got 2 years of probation and 500 hours of community service. The judge took into account that the fraud was technically incomplete, the quitclaim deed was never executed, and the property never transferred. His lack of prior criminal history and having a minor child also factored in as mitigating circumstances. His expensive lawyer had earned his retainer. Victoria took the news with total apathy. She had never been obsessed with seeing him in a prison cell. She just wanted the legal system to officially brand him what he was. The system did. Jason's civil appeal regarding the divorce was summarily dismissed by the appellate court. The ruling stood. The $24,500 was forcefully extracted from his remaining bank accounts via a court-ordered levy 3 months later. Eleanor Davis was never officially indicted. There was no hard evidence tying her to the criminal conspiracy. She never signed anything, never wired the money, never sent written instructions. Legally, she was just the passive grantee of a gift deed. Everyone involved knew she was the architect. But in the American legal system, knowing something and proving it beyond a reasonable doubt are two vastly different things, a fact Victoria understood better than anyone. However, Eleanor's life fell apart without the court's help. Jason, saddled with a felony record, was fired from his tech job and became entirely unemployable in the corporate sector. He ended up renting a bleak studio apartment in a cheap suburb south of Tacoma. He could no longer subsidize his mother's lifestyle. He had nothing left but court fines and a ruined reputation. Eleanor had to give up her nice apartment and move into a grim, low-income senior complex, surviving solely on Social Security. The parasitic empire she had tried to build using her son to steal from her daughter-in-law collapsed under its own weight, requiring no further intervention. It was not revenge. It was simply the natural consequence of removing the host. Chloe called Victoria the morning. The levied funds officially cleared into her account. "Money's there," Chloe said. "I see it," Victoria replied. "Thank you. For everything. Stop thanking me. Just come over to my house for wine sometime. Without legal binders and police reports. Deal." Victoria hung up and sat at her office desk for a while, looking out at the Seattle skyline. The seasons had turned again. Winter had broken into an unpredictable Pacific Northwest spring, the kind where it rains sideways at 9 a.m. and is blazing sunny by noon. Today, it was sunny. Seagulls were circling over Elliott Bay. She realized it had been roughly 5 months since the night of the birthday gala. 5 months is not a long time, yet it felt like a lifetime ago. In December, Haley took the SATs early to get a jump on college applications. She called her mother straight from the high school hallway before even stepping outside. "Mom, I crushed the math section." "I knew you would. You always say that." "Because it is statistically probable." Haley laughed. A bright, unburdened laugh that only comes when a massive weight has been lifted. Victoria listened to that laugh through the phone and realized there are certain battles worth fighting, worth enduring every bit of the hell they bring. That sound was one of them. By spring, Haley had mapped out her college track, computer science with a focus on cybersecurity. Victoria was not surprised. Her daughter had always viewed the world in structures. She saw systems where other people saw chaos. It was exactly like her mother's brain, just applied to a different industry. "I want to code something actually useful," Haley explained over dinner one night. "Like what?" "I don't know yet. Maybe an AI-driven forensic tool that scans legal contracts and real estate deeds for anomalies, so normal people can verify what they're actually signing before they get scammed." A pause. "I've been thinking about it ever since. Everything." Victoria stopped eating and looked at her daughter. "That is a billion-dollar idea." "I know," Haley grinned. Then she added softly, "You taught me to audit everything." "I did not teach you that. You did that on your own. You just have the instinct." "Mom, just take the compliment." Victoria smiled. "All right, thank you." In late April, Victoria took a long weekend, and she and Haley drove out of the city for 3 days. Not to a fancy resort, but to a rustic A-frame cabin near the Snoqualmie River that a coworker had recommended. It was built of heavy cedar, with a massive wooden deck overlooking the rushing water. The mountain air was still freezing, and they were the only ones there, save for an older couple in the cabin next door, who had been vacationing there every spring for a decade. They hiked the muddy trails, cooked massive breakfasts in the tiny cast-iron kitchen, and sat out on the deck at night wrapped in thick blankets, talking about absolutely nothing important. About the sci-fi books Haley was reading, about Victoria's new corporate merger project, about what Seattle used to look like back when the waterfront was all timber mills. They did not talk about Jason. They did not talk about Eleanor, or the lawsuits, or the police. Not because it was a forbidden topic, but because there was simply nothing left to say. It had become the past. Not erased, just filed away in its proper, harmless place. On their last night, Haley was sitting on the wooden railing of the deck, watching the black water rush by, and suddenly asked, "Mom, are you happy?" Victoria thought about it. She really thought about it, treating it as a genuine inquiry, not a rhetorical question. "Yes," she finally said. "I think I am. In spite of everything, or maybe because of it." She paused, pulling the blanket tighter around her shoulders. "You see, happiness is not the absence of bad things happening. It is when the life you are living is actually yours. When you chose it yourself, and when you defended it yourself." Haley stared down at the river. "I get that," she said. "I know you do." The river was dark and loud. Somewhere in the tree line, a nightbird called out, not a warning, just a sound, simply because it was spring and it could. The mountain air smelled like wet pine needles and cold earth. Victoria looked at her daughter, at her silhouette in the twilight. At this 16-year-old girl who would soon be 17, then 20, then 30. A human being who, in the absolute worst moment, did not panic but picked up the phone, who stood in a hallway and transcribed a conspiracy verbatim into her iPhone because she instinctively knew the value of evidence, who had stayed by her side through every grueling day of the last 5 months, quietly offering a plate of food or a perfectly timed joke. She didn't say any of this out loud. Some things do not require words. They sat there until the cold drove them inside. They went to sleep, and the next morning they walked down to the water again. Life was simple. Life was theirs, and nothing else was required. Thank you for reading to the end. If you found this story captivating, make sure to subscribe and leave a like so you do not miss out on future content.